Stop Overthinking, 23 Techniques to Relieve Stress, Stop Negative Spirals, Declutter Your Mind, and Focus on the Present, The Path to Calm by Nick Trenton. Summary and analysis by Brevreds. Introduction. Overthinking can feel like you're trapped in a mental maze. Your thoughts swirl around and around, analyzing, replaying, and obsessing over every detail, decision, or interaction. You've probably found yourself lying in bed at night, unable to sleep because your brain just won't switch off. Or maybe you've spent hours agonizing over a small mistake or future scenario, only to realize later that it didn't even matter. You're not alone. Millions of people struggle with overthinking every day, and it can make life feel overwhelming, confusing, and exhausting. Nick Trenton's Stop Overthinking is designed to help you break out of this trap. It offers practical strategies to calm your mind, take control of your thoughts, and stop the endless mental loops that sap your energy and make you feel stuck. Overthinking holds you back from taking action, creates unnecessary stress, and often leaves you feeling paralyzed by indecision. But by learning how to focus your thoughts and direct your energy, you can find freedom from overthinking and lead a more peaceful, productive life. This isn't just about theory, it's about real-life change. Through relatable stories, practical techniques, and mental shifts, we'll explore the ways you can regain control of your mind and move past the constant cycle of overthinking. Let's start this journey by diving into the core of what drives overthinking and how it manifests in everyday life. Chapter 1. The Overthinker's Trap, Stuck in the Spiral. Meet Rachel, a 28-year-old graphic designer. On the surface, she seemed to have it all together. She had a steady job, good friends, and a nice apartment. But beneath her calm exterior, Rachel's mind was constantly at war with itself. Every time she submitted a design at work, she would replay the process in her head, scrutinizing every tiny detail. Did I choose the right color palette? Should I have gone with a different font? What if the client doesn't like it? What if I'm not as good as I think I am? She couldn't turn off these thoughts, and it was driving her to the point of burnout. One day, Rachel received an email from a client. They loved her work, but they had a small revision request. Instead of feeling relief that they liked her design overall, Rachel spiraled. She zoomed in on the fact that they wanted changes. Her mind raced. Maybe they didn't actually like it at all. Maybe they were just being polite. What if they thought I wasn't capable? Should I offer to redo the whole project? Rachel spent the entire weekend obsessing over this minor revision, reworking her design dozens of times. She didn't enjoy her time off because she was too busy replaying conversations, dissecting feedback, and wondering what she could have done better. In reality, the client had only asked for a small tweak, but Rachel's overthinking had blown it into a huge, anxiety-filled ordeal. She had convinced herself that this one tiny revision was proof she wasn't good enough. This is the trap of overthinking. Your brain takes a small event and magnifies it, creating unnecessary worry and stress. Overthinkers often replay past events, fixate on future possibilities, and spend hours analyzing things that don't need that level of attention. Like Rachel, you may find yourself unable to let go of a minor detail, turning it into a source of anxiety. The first step to stopping overthinking is recognizing when you're doing it. Overthinking is a habit, and like any habit, it can be broken. Start by noticing the moments when your mind starts to spiral. When you catch yourself replaying a conversation for the 10th time or agonizing over a small decision, ask yourself, is this thought useful? Is it helping me move forward, or am I just getting stuck? If it's the latter, it's time to let go. Chapter 2. Fear of the Unknown, How Uncertainty Feeds Overthinking. Now, let's talk about Jason, a 35-year-old software engineer who had recently been offered a promotion. It was an exciting opportunity. He'd been working toward this role for years, but the promotion came with a catch. It required him to relocate to a new city. Jason had always been a planner. He liked knowing what was coming next, and the idea of uprooting his life made him anxious. What if the new city wasn't as great as he hoped? What if he didn't make any friends? What if he failed in his new role and had to start over? For weeks, Jason couldn't make a decision. Every time he thought about accepting the promotion, a flood of worries would come crashing in. His mind played out endless scenarios. What if he moved and hated it? What if he stayed and regretted not taking the chance? He created so many hypothetical outcomes in his head that he couldn't see the decision clearly anymore. His fear of the unknown was fueling his overthinking. The uncertainty of the future is a major driver of overthinking. When we don't know what's coming next, our brains try to fill in the gaps, often with worst-case scenarios. This instinct comes from a survival mechanism. Our ancestors had to anticipate threats to stay alive. But in today's world, overthinking about hypothetical problems doesn't protect you, it only makes you anxious. Jason's situation is a perfect example of how overthinking can paralyze you. Instead of focusing on what he could control, he was stuck in a loop of what-if scenarios. He wasn't any closer to making a decision, and the stress was taking a toll on his mental health. The way out of this trap is to accept that you can't predict or control everything. Life is full of uncertainties, and no decision comes with a guarantee. Instead of trying to predict every possible outcome, focus on what you can control. Ask yourself, what's the best choice I can make with the information I have right now? Jason eventually realized that no matter what decision he made, he could adapt and adjust along the way. Once he accepted that he didn't need to have everything figured out, he was able to make his decision with more clarity and less anxiety. Chapter 3. Paralysis by Analysis, Overthinking Decisions. Let's move on to Ava, a 32-year-old business owner who had built a successful e-commerce company from the ground up. Business was booming, and Ava was ready to expand. She had 2 potential investors lined up, both offering similar terms, but each with slightly different visions for the company. The problem was, Ava couldn't make up her mind. She spent hours analyzing each offer, making endless pros and cons lists, and rereading contracts until she could practically recite them from memory. At first, Ava believed that being thorough would lead her to the right decision, but after weeks of deliberating, she was more confused than ever. The more she thought about it, the more new questions and concerns popped up. What if she chose the wrong investor? What if one deal turned out better than the other? What if she missed a small detail that would make all the difference? The decision-making process that had started out as a logical exercise had turned into an overthinking nightmare. Ava's story is a classic case of paralysis by analysis. When faced with a tough decision, overthinkers often believe that if they just analyze the situation long enough, the right answer will reveal itself. But here's the problem: no decision is without risk. Overanalyzing won't give you certainty, it will only delay the inevitable. The truth is, most decisions are made in the face of some level of uncertainty, and that's okay. In Ava's case, the decision between the 2 investors wasn't about finding the perfect choice, it was about making a choice and moving forward. She realized that by overthinking, she was actually avoiding the decision altogether. Once she understood that both options had their merits and risks, and that there was no perfect answer, she was able to make her decision and start focusing on the future. To stop overthinking your decisions, you need to trust yourself. Make the best choice you can with the information you have, and then move forward. Remember, inaction is still a decision, it's just not a productive one. Chapter 4. The Illusion of Control, Letting Go of What You Can't Control. Sometimes, overthinking comes from the desire to control everything around us. Take Mia, a 40-year-old mother of 2, who prided herself on being a supermom. She was the type of person who always had everything under control: her kids' schedules, meal planning, house chores, her own full-time job. But recently, Mia's youngest child had been struggling in school. No matter how much Mia tried to help, her daughter's grades weren't improving. Mia spent hours researching new learning techniques, talking to teachers, and trying to find the perfect solution. She couldn't stop thinking about it. Despite all her efforts, Mia's daughter continued to struggle. Mia began to blame herself, wondering if she had missed something important. She replayed every conversation with the teachers, analyzed her daughter's study habits, and worried constantly about the future. Overthinking took over her life. She felt guilty when she was at work, anxious when she was at home, and powerless to fix the situation. Mia's overthinking was driven by her need to control the outcome. She believed that if she just tried hard enough, she could fix everything. But here's the hard truth: you can't control everything. No matter how much effort you put in, some things are beyond your control. In Mia's case, she needed to accept that she couldn't force her daughter to succeed in school. What she could do was provide support, encouragement, and resources. But ultimately, the outcome wasn't something she could control. The desire for control often leads to overthinking, because we believe that if we just think hard enough, we can predict and manipulate outcomes. But in reality, trying to control everything only leads to frustration and anxiety. The key is to focus on what you can control and let go of the rest. Mia eventually realized that she needed to trust her daughter to find her own way, and that by overthinking, she was actually creating more stress for both of them. Chapter 5: Perfectionism and Overthinking. The Quest for the Impossible. Let's talk about Ben, a 29-year-old marketing manager who is known for his meticulous attention to detail. Ben prided himself on doing everything perfectly, whether it was preparing a presentation for his boss, designing a campaign, or even just writing an email. He wouldn't let a single mistake slip through the cracks. But his quest for perfection came at a cost. Ben spent hours on tasks that should have taken minutes, constantly revising, tweaking, and second-guessing himself. One day, Ben's team was tasked with delivering a high-stakes marketing campaign for a major client. Ben took charge of the project and quickly became consumed by it. He stayed up late every night, reworking the campaign over and over. His coworkers had moved on to other tasks, but Ben couldn't let go. He was convinced that if he just spent a little more time on it, he could make it perfect. The deadline came and went, and while the campaign was a success, Ben wasn't satisfied. He fixated on the tiny details he hadn't had time to perfect, replaying the project in his head and thinking about all the ways it could have been better. Even though his boss and the client were thrilled with the results, Ben couldn't shake the feeling that he had fallen short. Ben's story shows how perfectionism fuels overthinking. When you're obsessed with doing everything perfectly, you'll never feel like you've done enough. There's always something that could be improved, a detail you missed, or a way to make things better. But here's the thing, perfection is an illusion. It's impossible to achieve, and striving for it only leads to stress and dissatisfaction. If you're a perfectionist, like Ben, it's time to let go of the need to be perfect. Focus on doing your best, not being flawless. Done is better than perfect, and taking action will always get you further than getting stuck in overthinking. Chapter 6: The Emotional Side of Overthinking. Overthinking isn't just about the mental loops you get caught in, it's also deeply tied to your emotions. In fact, much of overthinking is fueled by feelings of insecurity, fear, guilt, or anxiety. Your emotions can make small problems feel enormous and create endless mental spirals that take over your thoughts. Take the story of Jennifer, a 38-year-old mother of two who constantly worried about whether she was being a good enough parent. Every night after her kids went to bed, Jennifer's mind would go into overdrive. She replayed every interaction she had with her children, questioning her choices and wondering if she had done the right thing. Had she been too harsh when her son refused to eat his dinner? Did she spend enough time with her daughter, or should she have postponed that work call? Was she doing enough to help them with schoolwork, or was she missing important opportunities for their development? As these thoughts swirled around in her head, Jennifer would become consumed with guilt. The guilt led to anxiety, and the anxiety led to even more overthinking. She felt trapped in a cycle of self-doubt, unable to escape the overwhelming feeling that she wasn't doing enough. In reality, Jennifer was doing a great job as a mom. Her kids were happy and healthy, but her emotions distorted her perception of her parenting. Overthinking can become even more intense when it's connected to something you deeply care about. Your emotions magnify every small detail, making it hard to think clearly or see things for what they are. This is why overthinking is often rooted in emotional issues. The problem isn't that you're thinking too much, it's that you're letting your emotions control your thoughts. To break free from emotional overthinking, it's important to acknowledge and process your feelings. Instead of trying to overanalyze the situation, focus on how you feel and why. Sometimes, the act of identifying and sitting with your emotions can help release their grip on your mind. Jennifer eventually learned to separate her emotions from her overthinking. She practiced self-compassion and reminded herself that being a perfect parent isn't possible. She was able to stop the cycle of guilt and focus on what really mattered: enjoying time with her kids. Chapter 7: The What-If Trap, Escaping the Future That Hasn't Happened Yet. The what-if trap is a common form of overthinking that involves obsessing over future scenarios. This kind of overthinking is rooted in fear of the unknown and often leads to anxiety and indecision. When you're stuck in the what-if trap, your mind creates endless possibilities for how things might go wrong, making it impossible to focus on the present. Let's look at Marcus, a 26-year-old college graduate who had recently landed his first full-time job. Marcus was excited about his new role, but he couldn't stop worrying about all the things that could go wrong. What if I don't fit in with my coworkers? What if I make a mistake on my first project? What if I'm not cut out for this job and I get fired? The more Marcus thought about it, the more anxious he became. He hadn't even started the job yet, but his mind was already racing through every possible worst-case scenario. This type of overthinking is exhausting. You spend so much time imagining all the ways things could go wrong that you miss out on the excitement of new opportunities. Marcus found himself dreading his first day at work, not because anything bad had happened, but because he had overthought the future to the point of fear. In reality, none of Marcus's what-if scenarios had come true. His mind was simply creating unnecessary anxiety by focusing on hypothetical problems. To escape the what-if trap, you need to bring your attention back to the present moment. Ask yourself, is this worry based on something real, or is it just a possibility I'm imagining? Most of the time, the fears you're overthinking about aren't based on reality. They're projections of your mind trying to protect you from potential danger. But when you live in the future, you miss out on what's happening right now. Marcus learned to challenge his what-if thoughts by focusing on what was actually happening in the present. Instead of worrying about fitting in with his coworkers, he reminded himself that he hadn't even met them yet. Instead of stressing over making mistakes, he acknowledged that everyone makes mistakes, and it's a part of learning. By grounding himself in the present, Marcus was able to let go of his future fears and start his new job with confidence. Chapter 8: Rumination, the dangerous loop of dwelling on the past. While some overthinkers get stuck on the future, others can't stop replaying the past. This type of overthinking, called rumination, involves obsessing over past mistakes, regrets, or missed opportunities. When you ruminate, you go over the same event again and again, trying to figure out what you could have done differently. But no matter how much you think about it, you can't change the past. Take Dan, a 45-year-old sales manager who had recently lost a big client. The loss was devastating to Dan, not only because it hurt his business, but because he couldn't stop blaming himself. For weeks, Dan replayed the meeting where he thought everything had gone wrong. What if I had approached the pitch differently? What if I hadn't made that joke? What if I had been more prepared? No matter how much time passed, Dan couldn't let it go. He would lie awake at night thinking about the client he lost and what he could have done to prevent it. Rumination is dangerous because it keeps you stuck in the past. When you're constantly dwelling on what's already happened, you're not able to move forward. Dan's overthinking was preventing him from focusing on his current clients or finding new business opportunities. His obsession with the past was actually making it harder for him to succeed in the present. To break free from rumination, you need to accept that the past is unchangeable. No matter how much you think about it, you can't rewrite history. Instead of focusing on what went wrong, ask yourself what you can learn from the experience and how you can use that knowledge to move forward. Dan eventually realized that while he couldn't change the client he lost, he could use the experience to improve his future pitches. By shifting his focus from regret to growth, he was able to let go of the past and start building his business again. Chapter 9: Information Overload, when too much knowledge leads to overthinking. In today's world, we have access to more information than ever before. While this can be a great resource, it can also lead to overthinking. When you're constantly bombarded with new information, it's easy to get stuck in a cycle of analyzing, researching, and comparing, without ever taking action. Meet Sarah, a 30-year-old entrepreneur who was launching her first online business. Sarah wanted to make sure she did everything right, so she spent months researching every aspect of her business. She read articles on digital marketing, watched YouTube tutorials on web design, listened to podcasts about entrepreneurship, and joined multiple online forums. The problem was, the more information she gathered, the more overwhelmed she became. Instead of feeling confident and ready to launch her business, Sarah felt paralyzed by the sheer volume of information she had consumed. She couldn't stop overthinking every decision. Should she use this marketing strategy or that one? Should she focus on Instagram ads or Google ads? Should she launch now, or wait until she had perfected her website? The more she thought about it, the harder it became to make a decision. This is the downside of information overload. It leads to analysis paralysis. When you're trying to process too much information at once, your brain can't handle it, and you end up overthinking everything. In Sarah's case, her desire to be well-informed was actually holding her back from taking action. To overcome information overload, you need to set limits on how much information you consume. Focus on the essentials and take action before you get stuck in endless research. Sarah eventually realized that no amount of research would prepare her for the experience of actually running her business. She decided to launch her website and learn as she went. By taking action, she was able to move past her overthinking and start making progress. Chapter 10: Breaking Free: The Path to Overcoming Overthinking. By now you've seen how overthinking can take many forms, from analyzing the future to dwelling on the past, to getting lost in endless information. But the good news is, overthinking is a habit that can be broken. It's possible to take control of your thoughts and free yourself from the mental loops that keep you stuck. Breaking free from overthinking starts with awareness. You need to recognize when your mind is overanalyzing, ruminating, or getting stuck in what-if scenarios. Once you're aware of the pattern, you can take steps to interrupt it. Here are some strategies to help you stop overthinking. Challenge your thoughts. When you catch yourself overthinking, ask yourself if the thought is helpful or if it's just creating anxiety. If it's not helpful, let it go. Focus on the present. Overthinking often comes from worrying about the future or dwelling on the past. Bring your attention back to the present moment by practicing mindfulness or engaging in activities that keep you grounded. Take action. Overthinking thrives on inaction. The more you think about something without doing anything, the more anxious you become. Take small steps toward your goals to break the cycle of overthinking. Limit information. If you're prone to information overload, set boundaries on how much information you consume. Focus on the essentials and avoid getting lost in endless research. Practice self-compassion. Overthinking often stems from fear of making mistakes or not being good enough. Be kind to yourself and recognize that no one is perfect. It's okay to make mistakes and learn as you go. Conclusion: how to stop overthinking and live more peacefully. Overthinking is a mental habit that many people struggle with, but it doesn't have to control your life. By understanding the different forms of overthinking, whether it's ruminating on the past, worrying about the future, or getting lost in information, you can start to take steps to break free from the cycle. Here are the main strategies you can use to stop overthinking and live more peacefully. Challenge unhelpful thoughts. Recognize when your thoughts are spiraling and question whether they're helping you or just creating more anxiety. Stay present. Focus on what's happening right now instead of getting lost in the past or future. Mindfulness practices like meditation can help with this. Take action. Don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. Take small steps toward your goals, even if they're not perfect. Limit information. If you're prone to overanalyzing, set boundaries on how much information you consume. Trust that you know enough to take action. Be kind to yourself. Overthinking often comes from a fear of failure or not being good enough. Practice self-compassion and remind yourself that it's okay to make mistakes. By applying these strategies, you can start to break the habit of overthinking and free your mind for more important things. Life is too short to spend it trapped in endless mental loops. Take control of your thoughts and start living with more clarity and peace. Thank you for completing another BrevRead video. Like and subscribe to see more of our videos. If you have a particular book that you would like us to summarize, please share it in the comments section.